last couple of days. Norchad Omier, Miami, Florida. That's his post that he has committed to play at Baylor. This young man brought out probably as much response nationally when it comes to college basketball, more so than even Duke guard Jeremy Roach and most anyone else who's transferred in college basketball. He is a dog, 17 points a game, heck of a player at Miami, was at Arkansas State. He is, and Fran Fraschilla, I had a chance to visit with him. We'll have him in 15 minutes or so, ESPN college basketball broadcaster, on who he compares Norchad Omier to. He is in town. Not sure if we'll get him on today, working on that through someone who is his liaison, so to speak, as he visited Baylor after committing to them yesterday.
Our buddy Evan Miyakawa sent me this last night that he posted on Twitter at evanmaya.com and at evanmaya on Twitter. Omier is a monster addition for Baylor. He's a proven double-double machine. Led Miami in BPR each of the last 2 seasons. Averaged 17 points and 10 rebounds per game, making 60% of his twos and adding some perimeter shooting to his arsenal. 35% on 2.2 attempts per game from threes. He led the ACC in box BPR in 2022 and 23. He's also very good at getting steals for a big man, averaging 1.5 a game.
We're going to have a note about that in just a second. Craig, your thoughts about the signing or at least the commitment from Omier?
Yeah, I mean, I'll default on all the technical breakdowns and things like that for the experts and the guys like Evan Maya who do such a thing. But based on all of their opinions that I was able to wrangle, pretty much every voice you could think of who had something to say about this pickup, it was unanimously positive, and not just positive, but overwhelmingly positive. A guy who really has a lot of people who think that he is not only a great player, but a terrific addition to this roster. So you missed on Jonas Adu last week, although the mourning period for that was quite short because it became apparent rather quickly that they were going to have somebody else coming down the pipeline. So it was almost like, don't worry, don't shed a tear. You'll be sitting there with a smile on your face in the next couple of days. And sure enough, right before the weekend ends up, there is this pledge. So, they had this cocked and ready to go. Of course, you wanted to get Adu. You obviously had pursued him, but this is, a nice different road to take, and I think that they're more than pleased with where they are now after this pickup. So it's been a busy offseason. Just the whole Scott Drew Kentucky situation starting things off after the season ended. We know what that turned into, a big win for Baylor, and you knew that he wasn't sitting here to just be here and be happy and run out his contract. He wants to win, and they have him, now locked up, and with the, the pledge that he's going to be here and turning down a job like Kentucky, you wondered what big next steps they were going to take, and I think they've taken a couple of huge steps so far in the portal, and they're right there at the top of, whatever portal rankings you want to look at. So I know they're not done. I know there's more just finagling with that roster, but they've settled their coaching staff. They got over the Drew situation. They've added a couple of dynamic players, and so I think things are, really looking great right now for Baylor basketball.
Here's a note from Kevin Flaherty, who writes college basketball, very, very good at what he does. This is a text he sent to me after he heard the news. A dog, big-time athlete. This is kind of on top of different words, basically explaining, Paul, what you had statistically. Picture shoving a rocket up Mark Vital. Combination of the two makes them bigger and than his height. When he signed with Miami, reports out of Arkansas State that he had him at a 40-inch vertical. I know he didn't jump that at the Combine last year, but I wonder if he was banged up because he's a way better athlete than what he tested.
Yeah, he's a fantastic player, and Miami in the middle of the pack in the ACC this year after having a couple of really good years, obviously right in a row, but it wasn't because of a lack of effort from him. Again, 17-10 is, you're going to win most games if you got a guy who gives you that every night, and it's exactly what Baylor needed. And also, if you think about the offseason that Baylor has had, their coach said no to both Kentucky and Louisville within 10 days. Mm-hmm. Even though they lost some coaches, they brought some in that they really like. And losing coaches isn't necessarily a bad thing because, it means that you're doing really well. And they've not to mention the recruiting class from the 2024 signees anyway, that includes VJ Edgecombe and others. They also brought in Norchad Omier and Jeremy Roach, and it's been a fantastic offseason so far.
Yeah, by no means have they just sat there and go, oh, everything's cool. And now, by the way, there will be another coaching I guess, announcement, I think, in the next day or two, according to my conversation with Fran Fraschilla. Craig, anything else on Omier? There we are with that. Now, here's also one of the responses to Baylor getting Norchad Omier and his commitment from Sean Paul. May have officially just won the offseason. Omier,
kiss
and
of
yeah,
death.
I know, kiss of death. At worst, feel like a top 15, among the top 15 transfers in the country. Omier, top 5 or 8. Roach, 10, 15. Two huge veteran players with Final Four experience headed to Waco. Now, here's one of the things about this, and along with who they kept with none, they knew Langston Love just needs to be healthy. They were a young team last year, and they just got 2 seasoned veterans in Norchad Omier and also with Jeremy Roach, who are also very high-level players. So not just the experience, the age, the seasoning, but also the talent.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. That's, one of those posts that you see, and not a knock at all on where that's coming from, because that's, what you do on Twitter. You kind of summarize the events that have happened. There's a lot of, engagement type farming stuff like that, though, where you run down, all these big accomplishments, and I know that's not what this person is necessarily trying to do, but you see a lot of those. I've seen a lot of those over the last 24 hours when it comes to Baylor, and it's yeah, what they've done is great. It's all great, but I don't like the whole winning the offseason thing, especially when the offseason is not anywhere close to finished. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's freaking May 6th, dude. We got 6 more, not 6 more months. We've got, 5 months until they play basketball games again. So they're off to a terrific start. Given the hand that they were dealt, they've navigated it terrifically. Let's see, how they finish with the roster and finish with the staff, but yeah, if you're into off-season awards, they've won the off-season so far, but I'm just not big on that, because we very rarely circle back to that unless we're sitting there to dunk on that opinion, like with Miami back when they won the off-season, in the transfer portal a couple years ago, and we know what that turned into. And A&M won an off-season, and what did that turn into? And we've seen
that's right.
A lot of people win off-seasons that don't even sniff the championship. So, that's accurate. It's the opinion on if they won the offseason, I think, is probably still a little bit too early. But
Mike Bean was saying, does no one know what KU did during the offseason? Which, of course, you can start comparing.
Kentucky's been very busy. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. So it's very subjective, and I feel like that is sort of one of those engagement farming things of let's just say a bunch of great things, and I'm not accusing. You know what I'm saying, though.
Yeah, but you can't. First of all, you don't win the title in the offseason.
Right.
Second of all, there's a lot of people have a good, we threw up the graphic the other day, Craig, you and I, of Kentucky's roster and what they've done. They're killing it. Mark Pope's killing it. There's, So it's cool. It'll get a bunch of Baylor fans fired up to retweet it and everything, and they've had a great offseason, so it's been good. Won't crown them yet, though. That's all I'm saying is there's a lot more work to do.
It's just one person, one tweet
among
hundreds that cover men's basketball and sports, but Mike Bean, no doubt, KU has had. Bill Self said he's not going through that again, and he damn sure is trying to make sure he gets that done. Now, a couple of other notes. This is, and I know that we'll have Dan Lust, sports law attorney, on about 4 o'clock today. Cody Campbell from the Matador Club, former Texas Tech alum or letterman. He'll join us today at 3:40, and then Fran Fraschilla in a moment. But College Football Players Association supporting collective bargaining, the model without employment, that will start to lobby Congress. Now, we see where schools are ready to get much more open to paying players, even within the athletic departments, but they're a little bit nervous about having them called employees. Well, the players or the athletes from at least this association, which continues to grow, they themselves support collective bargaining, the model, but without employment.
Well, you heard from Darren Heitner when we had him on last week that, not most of the athletes don't support employment. Employment also allows, I think they also know that, when you get that on the either side of it, first of all, the schools don't want it because they don't want more employees than they already have. Second of all, I think it gives the schools some opportunity to maybe make this a little bit harder to negotiate and have some of those freedoms that they have now would be gone. So I don't think they really want that. I like that, people are trying to work for a bipartisan solution, and that if it works, look, if you can get them to where they're not employees, but there's collective bargaining about what they get, and not only what they get while they're in college, but I think particularly healthcare after college for injuries suffered while they were athletes at college. I think that's really good. I think that's really good and a positive step forward. And I don't think most athletes want to be part of a union or necessarily be considered employees at that point in their life.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some help that would be needed, right, through Congress to make this happen. So it's still one of those things where it's like, that's great that you feel that way, but you still are relying on the politicians to come in and swoop in and save the day. Am I correct in reading it this way? So this is one of those, it's like, hey, great on the surface, but will the politicians follow through and actually make this happen? And yeah, it sounds great from a player's perspective, is that you still get everything that you want, but you also don't have to worry about getting fired, basically. I mean, sounds like I want my cake and I want to eat it too. Like, I don't want to be an employee, because then you can fire me and you can actually have like some boss rules over me. But if I'm not technically an employee, but I get all the employee benefits, that would be great. That's what that sounds like to me. And if they could have that hybrid option, as they phrase it here, a hybrid option that stops short of full employee classification for college athletes, but that gives athletes numerous protections and the ability to collectively bargain with schools and other conferences. So, I mean, yeah, if they go for that, great. That'd be terrific for the athletes. But, again, the whole political aspect of this makes you wonder, how realistic or how quickly something like that can get done. I mean, it's good, though, that the athletes are talking back and forth, and that there's people getting their ducks in a row and preparing to set up for whatever it is moving forward. But, yeah, that sounds like obviously the best case scenario for the athletes themselves would be to have the best of both worlds. So
they want all this, but they don't want to be employees. And basically that's also what you hear most of the universities saying, is that we want to help and jump into this the way we should be or should have been, and yet we don't know if we want our athletes to be employees. So I wonder how that affects somebody, Mike Bean, I think it was, again, Mike's on a roll earlier today. How does that affect how does that affect them as in academics?
Everybody just forgets that exists, basically.
Yeah, not me.
I know. Me neither. I had a rant like 2 years ago, and I got panned in some cases for actually thinking that school matters. And it wasn't a whole, like, the degree is the most important thing you'll ever do, but all I was saying was, like, hey, remember, this is college sports. Like, there are classes and there are degrees, and I had a lot of people like, well, those degrees don't mean anything for you, because you chose to go a route where they don't mean anything, but that doesn't mean that everybody else has to just waste the $100,000 education that's put in their laps. And I get it's a whole complex argument about, well, practice times and things like that, but not trying to get into the mud on all that conversation, but in general, I do feel like the value of education, people act like that is nothing now. They act like it's absolutely nothing when everybody else at the school, except for like, people who are just brilliant or from another country or whatever, are paying tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're basically saying, I didn't mean anything. Come watch me play on Saturday, though. Thanks for the NIL money. And it's just like, it's crazy how the education part gets lost. And I know we also kind of dunked on that during realignment, but that's because it was so overstated. It was being stated as like that was the driving factor, and when in reality that was not the case whatsoever, which is what we were pointing out. But it does matter, and sometimes it just seems like it doesn't at all in college sports today, which is just wild to me.
Remember Penny Boone? He wanted to go to work in Kentucky, and then all of a sudden some of the transfer credits or whatever, he ends up at UCF. By the way, when you talk about academics and it doesn't matter if you're one of those or degrees because you're thinking about just the football part of it, there are approximately 11,000 football players, FBS football players on scholarship. 131 programs, 85, and of course we know that's even stretched higher because of walk-ons getting paid. It's about 11,000 players, and around 300 to 350 will be drafted or be given undrafted free agent contracts. So just put that in perspective why, yes, academics can make a difference and also should matter. That was SoCal Texan who brought that up on academics. Mike Bean brought up the fact employment means a different relationship with the IRS. that they may not want
Right.
on both sides.
And I'll tell you this, also, and this is a very minor thing. I wouldn't see most people doing this, but to your point about academics being important, Craig, and the schools wanting to have that, the schools maybe put themselves in a position where if they are employees and their employment is hinging on that athletics, then they have given the people excuse not to go to class. And because everybody who works at a university doesn't have to go to class.
Right.
Like, so, I mean, if I'm the locksmith at the university, do I have to take biology? No, I don't. So you're here. You hired me because I fix locks. Well, you hired me because I play football.
Yeah.
So I don't need to open books. I just need to do my thing. I think that's a minor offshoot of it. But again, it's a fight they probably don't want to have.
Yeah, and I don't think that people will be as interested if you're not going to school. I mean, I know Joe Burrow technically didn't even attend an in-person class at LSU, I don't believe.
Online.
But he's still an LSU student, online courses or whatever. So there's not like this need for everybody to be in like classes all day, every day, or anything like that. I'm just saying, I just think it's kind of wild, I guess is the adjective or the phrase I'll use, that it's like, oh yeah, education. Oh yeah, that's part. It's like, yeah, we're talking about college sports, guys. We're talking about college freaking sports. It's the whole difference in that sport versus all the other sports is that school's involved. But it does seem like it's just kind of either made to sound like it's worthless or in the way sometimes, and that's just crazy to me. But if this is a way to resolve a lot of the issues at hand, then that's great. But it does seem like a very sweet deal for the athletes of having your cake and eating it too. But hey, man, whatever gets the ball down the road to a place where eventually everything is what it needs to be for everybody to kind of know what the landscape is. I'm all for whatever it takes to get there and get there as quick as possible.
Cody